What up? It's the Craft Beer Playbook, episode 11. We're in double digits now, and certainly excited. Zach here, Brian here. We're live.
Digging music, bro. That was pretty sweet. Got me pumped.
Yeah, man. We got an intro now. We're getting out and about. 10 episodes in. We're just going to continue growing the brand and just kind of trying to network. I mean, remember, we started this because we wanted to get out and meet more people. And we've certainly done that. Some listeners, Leroy, our guy, Sarasota Hazy, Justin, obviously. So we've already kind of been able to brand ourselves and meet some great, again, listeners and fellow craft beer drinkers. 2 events now, one at Bastet, one at Seventh Son, whether we're talking about Tom in Houston with Bastet or Devin and Kat over there at Seventh Son, just want to keep building and networking. And man, Brian, a lot of fun, dude. I don't want to – we're going to talk about March Madness a lot today. It's a free fridge episode, and we're certainly going to, kind of give the normal loving that we do on both those fronts, sports and beer. But as we look back, Brian, any highlights that stick out to you through these first 10 episodes? We're on episode 11 now. Beers, things that have happened. And as you kind of ponder and see what pops into your mind, I think one of my favorite things that's happened actually is the attempting of hanging up our banner, our background, our backdrop, and using duct tape and masking tape. And it fell on us at one point in an episode. So kind of going through those bumps and bruises, I think those are things that or you just kind of got to laugh through them as and just like anybody who's building any podcast, blog, brand, whatever, you're going to run into things that don't work great. And in the 2 events we've done, we've had things sound wise, audio wise on my front, the technical side, like we're learning as we go in a lot of ways. And I try to embrace those types of things.
Yeah, we've had a couple streams cut off, the computer shutting off halfway through that some of our listeners don't know about, but I think that's a part of kind of building anything. It's been fun. Really what stands out to me though, too, especially from the 2 on-sites we've done so far, is just the unique story of the breweries, talking with Devin and hearing about how she got started in, her beer career in college and going and actually getting a degree in it. And then talking with Tom in Houston at Basset and hearing how their passion came from, like cooking and really looking at brewing beer, like being a chef and knowing your ingredients, and those 2 guys working in a law firm first, and now they run a brewery. So that part's always been interesting to me. I've always had a passion for craft beer, and I've always had this dream of maybe one day running my own brewery. So it's really fun to kind of hear the evolution of the idea into something that actually comes to fruition.
Yeah, and we're looking forward to continuing to build in the next 10 episodes and the 10 after that. So certainly, if you're listening, you're paying attention to this, if there's a brewery you think we should go to and check out, if you just think there's beer from a specific brewery you think we should dive into and give a little toast to, like, holler at us. Let us know at any point. You can find us easily online at thecraftbeerplaybook.com, but on social media, both Facebook and Instagram at The Craft Beer Playbook, on Twitter at Beer Playbook, and we're easy to get a hold of at the craft. So if you want to email us too, thecraftbeerplaybook@gmail.com. We're pretty active on that as well. So we'll continue to kind of do that. And we got some exciting things in the works. Hoping to get over and do a live remote with Descent Brewing in St. Pete. We haven't really been to that side of town yet. So I'm going to reach out and see if we can kind of set something up. Our guy, Ryan, one of the main bartenders over there, obviously good friends with him. So hoping to get that locked in just as we move forward. But Brian, it's a free fridge day. We're going to talk, like I said, hoops. The brackets are set. What beer you got, man? I got a couple here. I don't know if you have one ready already.
I do have one ready. So as you know, I'm working my way through that Sweetwater pack that I picked up, and I do love Sweetwater, the 420 strain. So today I'm going with, pop this open.
This sounds so good. It's such a beautiful sound.
Crisp. So this is the Jack Herrer Harvest Ale. Herrer. I don't know how to say his name, but you get the idea.
No, you crushed it. So that's good. You're rolling through that. So I actually just got a sampler pack of cigars yesterday. Gurkha cigars. Going to crack those out. Not quite craft beer and sports, but as we get ready for round 1 of March Madness, the first real round, not the playing games tomorrow, Friday.
Hey man, those count. Every game counts.
Yeah, they do. Michigan State's in a playing game this year. So I'm going with Parrish Brewing, which our guy Joe, he lives over in New Orleans, and that's where we kind of learned about Parrish Brewing. because they're out of that area. I think, what is it? Broussard is the actual area specifically in Louisiana they're out of, but Ghost in the Machine is a phenomenal IPA. We've had it at Disney, we've had it at ABC, we've seen it. He's, I think, brought us some, so that's one of our go-tos from him. But this is from the same brewery, Parrish Brewing, Dr. Juice, and it's also an IPA. So
Dr. J is in the house, baby.
I wanted to try something, still an IPA. So let me pour this bad boy up in my Coppertail glass.
If I remember correctly, I think he had Ghost in the Machine on tap at his wedding, I believe.
That's funny. I don't remember his wedding. So I remember being in Louisiana for it. I don't remember what I drank there. That makes sense. He did have a keg. I remember something.
It is NOLA after all. So, there's, look at that color, man. Looks like a freshly squeezed grapefruit.
I'm starting to roll our cans. I'm starting to remember to do that before I crack them open a little bit more. I did that yesterday too.
Sediment, man. We've talked about this.
I don't even know which one. Like, I know you're supposed to roll the ones with the sediment, but I'm not even checking. I'm just rolling them all either way now. Just rolling them out the gates.
Sours. You're rolling a lager,
stout, lager, porter, sour. Well, cheers, man. Let's see if we got the.
I always get that. Cheers.
Nice.
Oh,
that's good.
Super hoppy, but it's got like a nice harvest, harvest ale. Like, just you picture the taste, or you envision the taste of a harvest ale. You can tell it's definitely a darker color.
Yeah, this is like the hops are more subtle. You can really taste like almost the citrusy flavor to it. It's a lot more calm in terms of like some of the other IPAs we've tried. I like it though. It's a good day beer, with the sun out, and I could definitely start the train on this.
I can't wait for a few day beers tomorrow. We're kicking off our March Madness marathon.
Yeah, so, man. First of all, shout out to the fact that we made it this far, right? I mean, we didn't have March Madness last year. It's been so long just to fill out brackets again and kind of go through it. I'm not going to bury the lead, man. I think we go right into our final four.
I think we go final four.
I think we go straight to our final four, man. And then we can kind of work. Because, I learned a long time ago. I was saying this on air this week at iHeart. I was like, I learned a long time ago on radio, nobody wants to hear you go through your entire bracket. So I know the popular thing is like, Sweet 16, upsets, like things like that. I like to get the Final Four out of the way. I'm like, just give the Final Four and then we can kind of talk about it. Because, honestly, that's what we're going to build up to and react to anyways. And I only have 2 1 seeds in my Final Four.
Okay.
So
I was just reading an article the other day.
I read an article.
And the over-under for that is 2.5. Pretty significant odds on the under there for the ones making and that's based on historical data as well. Like, a lot of times people put, people fill this out with chalk. They're always putting their 1 seeds in there. And realistically, in the last 10, 15 years or so, there's only been 1 or 2 1 seeds make the Final Four. It's really not common for more than that to make it. So I'm not sure if I agree with that. Actually, to be transparent here, I'm still working through my bracket. So I kind of no, it's all right. I'll give my Final Four, but I'm still working on it for our pool that we're doing because I'm very meticulous. So I like to do my research, even though it never helps ever. I'm always it always screws me over to overthink it. But I just like to kind of look at because as you know, we call it in our group chat blood, right? We want to see the bloodshed. We want to see the carnage. I'm a big fan of upsets when it comes to March Madness. So that's probably the thing I do wrong with my bracket, is I pick too many upsets because I'm just excited to see all the carnage, and it never really goes that way. But either case, I like to read through all the kind of descriptions, learn about each of the teams, so I kind of see who that Cinderella might be. But I can do the Final Four.
Yeah, and to that point, I talked about this, I think, with some people last week. It's almost a shame that the Dukes and Kentuckys of the world aren't in it, because obviously giant fan bases, they have a great legacy. It's always, I think, better for the tournament to have those types of fan bases and teams involved. But for the people that don't like them, they're villains, and every great movie has a great villain, right? So for college basketball to be at its best in the tournament, hate them or love them, you need the Dukes, you need the Kentuckys. And I mean, Michigan State's a play-in game. I just and clearly look, UNC is still in the mix, but they're an 8 seed, right? Like they're not one of the big dogs. Gonzaga is probably the biggest, Goliath of the Goliaths that we're used to. And Gonzaga is like the funny team because everybody's like, oh, yeah, they're not a real one because of the conference they play in. So it's really interesting.
Well, I mean, with them winning, a couple years ago, they've kind of squarely put themselves now on the map as being legitimate. I mean, I know they play in a soft conference, but now, I mean, when you get to that stage consistently and you finally get over the hump and win it, I mean, how can you not? How can you not say that Gonzaga?
But they're not a villain. Nobody's ever even now, nobody looks at them. You don't hate Gonzaga. Nobody hates them.
No.
The Zags, they're like a movie. You feel nostalgic, almost like a Disney film. Like I just don't see the Zags as a true villain. And then you look at the other 1 seeds, like Illinois hasn't been relevant. They're back into the 1. Baylor certainly isn't a villain. And then I guess Michigan, but I don't know. Michigan's a hard school to hate unless you're an Ohio State fan,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. So that's my thing.
I'm assuming you've got your Final Four pegged already then. So I'll let you go first with your reveal.
Yeah. And it's funny because like you said, you read different notes, you realize, certain things happen and you're like, okay, well, I got to go back to my bracket because statistically a 12 will beat a 5. And if I have all 5s winning, I know I'm going to be wrong. So in terms of the first round, I got some things I've moved around and I'll probably make some more changes. But my Final Four, at least 3 of the teams I feel really good about. I feel really good about Gonzaga getting to the Final Four. I feel really good about Baylor getting to the Final Four. I think those have been the best 2 teams all year in terms of talent. Now, Illinois has come on late, and I'm certainly aware of how good they are and how hot they are right now. And this is probably the Final Four team I've waffled on the most because I don't have Illinois in the Final Four. I think that there's going to be some blood on that side of the bracket. I like a 4 seed. I like OK State actually coming out of that bracket. I think
you're riding on the Cade Cunningham train, huh?
I am. And listen, I'm aware that that's a big upset. And that one, I'll be honest, I don't feel super confident about. That's me just kind of thinking, okay, I'm going against the grain a little bit. Now on the other side, so that's a 1, a 1, and a 4. I have the 4 seed Florida State coming out and winning in that side. And that's a tough side. Look, I think it's terms of the 1 seed. I think Michigan has the toughest path when you look at everybody in their bracket. I don't even know if Michigan will get past LSU in the second round, assuming, the Tigers make it out of their 8-9 matchup. But I think Michigan's just going to struggle. They're missing one of their best players in Livers. He's not going to be maybe available for the first game, let alone the tournament. So I think those are the types of things. I'm not really confident in Michigan without him. And I think they have a tough path. And then even down now, FSU, honestly, I'm more afraid if I'm a Knowles fan of Texas than I am Michigan in that side of the bracket because Shaka Smart's a hell of a coach. Texas playing good ball. But yeah, I like the 4 seeds, Florida State and OK State. And I like the 1s, Baylor and Gonzaga. That's my Final Four.
Dude, I'm getting excited, man. I just love March Madness and just hearing you talk about that, it's so interesting to me because you actually pegged that region, which with Michigan, that is the East region. I'm actually looking at this. I actually consider this one of the weaker sides, the weaker regions.
Alabama's the 2 in that region. I mean, I think it's stacked.
I mean, that's what I love about it, though, right? There's so many differing opinions here, and nobody knows who's going to end up being right about this. I mean, Florida State's played really well at certain times this year. I think they've kind of sputtered down the stretch, so that's what makes them sort of an unknown, right? They've definitely got the talent, but a lot of March Madness comes down to who's hot going into the tournament. And I don't think if you look at Florida State, I don't think that's a team that you can necessarily peg as hot.
Did they just lose in the championship game?
They lost to well, first of all, there was a team that had Virginia had to pull out of the ACC tournament. They didn't even get to play, and I'm pretty sure that they were the they were the 2 seed or something.
Well, and again, in terms of going back and thinking through things, I mean, you have to, in terms of Kansas and Virginia, who both had to pull out of their tourneys, Kansas traveled on time. Virginia's going to get 1 practice in. They're flying in Thursday, assuming all their tests are still negative. You got to take that into consideration, right? Those are the little things that you have to keep an eye on. You're not just filling out a bracket. I mean, you got to know Virginia had to pull out of their tournament. They haven't had their team together. They're flying into Indy Thursday. They'll get 1 practice in before their game Saturday. That's going to affect them. I don't know if it'll make them lose, but it'll affect them.
Yeah, so Florida State did lose to Georgia Tech in the ACC championship, but like we just said, Virginia had to pull out, and I think that I can't remember if that gave Florida State the quick advancement or if it gave Georgia Tech or one of the other teams. But there's been a lot of unknowns there. I mean, obviously, you've had a lot of these teams kind of dealing with this at random times here during the conference tournaments. I don't know, man. You look at Florida State and you look at kind of like I'm looking at their schedule now and kind of how they end the year. Like they lost at Notre Dame by 10 points, which is a team that's not in the field. They beat North Carolina, who was coming on hot, right? But then followed up again with a loss to Georgia Tech, who, again, could be a decent team, although I know they're missing one of their best players coming into the
tournament. A lot
of
people have the Yellow Jackets on upset alert early.
Yeah, well, that's because their best guy, I guess, just got hurt or something. He's not going to play. So that's going to be an interesting game in that 8-9 matchup. But, yeah, I don't know, man. I look at Florida State, and do they have the talent there to make a run? Absolutely. But I look at the ACC overall, and again, this is just my opinion, but I just think the ACC is just overall very, very weak this year. When you compare it to a conference like the Big Ten, I think like top to bottom, the Big Ten was beating up on each other this year, and that's going to have a lot of those teams battle tested, which is why I think you see a team like maybe Rutgers or something like go on a run as a 10 seed. Like you never know. Like these teams that are battle tested are the ones I think you look at for upsets because they've been in those big games. They know how to handle that. And that's why I'm okay with Baylor being one of my favorites here. I'm okay with them kind of picking up 2 losses going into the tournament because, we've talked about that, how you kind of need that. You need that loss to kind of bounce back.
And a couple things too. You mentioned Rutgers. They're the only lower seed in the tournament actually favored to win. So, that's one of those little tidbits. Rutgers is the only team that's ranked lower than the seed that they're playing against. It's favored in their game. You mentioned main players being out. I mentioned Michigan's livers. Villanova's also missing a top guy. It looks like Faulkner is going to be back, I believe, for Tennessee. So that's the thing for me, Brian. Like you consider all this, you consider it's a pandemic year. Some teams missed like a month. Like there's been so much in and out. Players missed. Like I just think there's more room for chaos than ever in this tournament. And that's why for me, but with that being said, I'm like, okay, well, if a team has its best players available and they're playing at their best, where do I rank them? And I think if you're talking about teams playing at their best, if Florida State's playing at their best, they're a top 5 team, in my opinion, because I think they're that talented. I think, look, they got 6th man of the year on their squad. He's the most NBA ready guy. He's not even a starter under Coach Hamilton. And I think Florida State's got a big chip on their shoulder probably once the madness starts because they could have been a 1 seed. They could have won it all last year. And I know it's not the exact same team, but I do think that plays a role. Now, before you keep avoiding, what's your Final Four now that I've already given you mine? You punk?
Yeah. All right. So, So the West, I've got Gonzaga coming out of that. They're actually in my championship game. So they're obviously coming out as the 1 seed there from that bracket. From the East, this one, again, I've struggled with because I'm not a huge believer in Michigan. I know they're ultra talented. I know they're a very good team, but they've still shown a lot of flashes of just inconsistency at certain times, especially in the last month or 2 of the season. And probably I'll say the last month of the season, but just to be different, because I don't want to put a 1 seed in there and I'm not a full believer in Michigan. I'm going to go ahead and take the 3 seed out of that region and go with Texas. I think that, Bama's tough, but I don't, Bama's one of those teams where it's just like, when you start looking at the level of talent and how it stacks up against some of these teams that have been solidly recruiting for a while, that Texas obviously gets some big recruits in basketball all the time. Obviously, if it comes down to them against Michigan, I don't see Bama really stacking up with some of the people in their region. So I'm going to go with the 3 seed there out of that in Texas. So we've got Gonzaga, Texas. The South, I'm taking Baylor. They're also going to be in my championship team. I've said all year that those are the 2 best teams. I've watched them both play. They're deep. They're long. They've got scorers. They've got defense. They can block shots. I mean, they're 2 complete teams in my opinion. So Baylor out of the South. And then the Midwest, I'm going with the 2 seed Houston. I've watched them a few times this year too, and they got a solid defense. They're scrappy. And I think
Houston.
Going with Houston. Yeah, they're a tough team.
Oh, I don't like that. But hey, I'll say this. I think you were a little disrespectful reacting to what I have for the Final Four. It sounds like we're in the same kind of like thought process We both picked the 2-1s the same. We both agree that little bottom half of the bracket in Texas and Florida State will be the winner and come out to the Final Four. And we both think that ultimately Illinois doesn't get back to the Final Four. So I do think, even though you reacted kind of like a jerk, I think we're similar in our thought process.
I was talking about your East. The only thing I said was that I disagreed with you on you saying the East was the toughest side.
And then you took the 3 seed.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm not taking the 1. Who'd you take in that side? You took
Florida State, the 4 seed.
Right. Okay. Well, I disagree with that. I think that Florida State
is fine.
I think they're frauds, but again, it's your bracket.
You said it's the weakest side, and then you picked the 3 seed, though. You didn't pick Alabama as the 2. You didn't pick Michigan as the 1. That's what I'm saying. Like, we have a similar thought process. So you do think do you think Michigan's the weakest one? Let's go there.
I will say that. Yeah, I'll go with Michigan as the weakest one.
Okay, I agree, which is partially, why you put Texas there, why I put Florida State there. And again, the path could potentially go through LSU, who I think is underseeded. I think
but when I say weaker side, that doesn't mean I'm saying that every other team other than the 1 is weak. I'm just saying when you compare the top to bottom, 1 through 16, to all the other regions, I think that one has some of the weaker, questionable teams in it. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I think so I guess we just have a different description of like what the weaker side is in terms of what we view that as. But again, I agree with you. I think we're on the same page in a lot of ways in terms of, the 3 or 4 could come out of that region easier than any of the others. And a lot of that is because we have Michigan as the 4th ranked 1 seed. Very interesting stuff. Now, we got to get into this a little bit. Obviously, we've looked across, and I'm certainly, if you have anything else you want to pop out in terms of like teams, I'd love to hear it. But, look, we both went to Florida. The Gators are playing Virginia Tech to start things off. They'd probably take on Ohio State if they made it to the second round. What is the Gators' ceiling when it comes to their tournament? And listen, again, look, they're an average team in my opinion. Like, I'm not convinced. If I'm betting, I think they get out of the first round, and I am betting. But with that being said, it's not like I'm super confident. Like, I wouldn't bet my house on it,
Yeah, man. I don't know. This has been like, and obviously you come into the tournament, your team makes it, you're excited, you want to pick them. But this has been the 1 year where I've really been like, man, if there were to be a year where I'd pick against the Gators, this would be the year. Because I just have no faith in them, man. You have no idea what team you're going to get. They haven't even won 4 consecutive games this year in a row all year. That's never happened. So they're so inconsistent. They got that big win against West Virginia, and they follow that up with a disappointing loss. It's just this team, you just don't know what you're going to get. They're a young team. They show flashes of being undisciplined at times, and you're like, okay, does that fall on Mike White, or is it just immaturity of the players? Like, it's just one of those things where, okay, Virginia Tech, 10 seed coming in, you're like, okay, well, Florida's they're slightly favored. They should win, but I don't have a lot of confidence in that. And I would not be surprised at all if Virginia Tech bounces us out first game.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way. Now, look, it's one of those things. And I tell people this all the time. In terms of fans, when like games start, everybody should be confident. Like, if you're a fan, look, you're wearing an Orioles hat. When opening day rolls around, you're going to be like, you never know. They could make the playoffs.
It's that hope, right? That false hope.
Fans are naturally optimistic. So, like, as you know, when it comes to the tournament, when tip-off happens, I'm going to be like, Gators got this, and if they beat Virginia Tech, first game of the day, 12:15 tip on Friday, first round. If they beat Va Tech, we're going to immediately start talking about how they could beat Ohio State if they played like that. Like, that's why I love sports, because it is an optimistic thing to have in life. Like, nobody goes into a game and they're like, oh, we're definitely going to lose. You have some type of belief, even in a David Goliath situation, in terms of like who your opponent is, if that's the case. So it's really fun.
And the Gators actually have had, over the years, have actually had some really good luck with how the bracket is kind of shaken out. I remember a few years ago, Georgetown was the 2 seed, and we were the 7 seed that year. And they got upset by, I think, Norfolk State or something like that. It was
Norfolk State. Yep.
We played Norfolk State in the second round instead of playing Georgetown, who had a hell of a year that year in the Big East or whatever division they were in, conference they were in that year. So, And then there's been other instances too where that's kind of happened for the Gators, kind of cleared the path a little bit. So, you never know. And that's why I love it so much is like you look at Oral Roberts, right? But they've been in the tournament before. I think that they were the team that beat Kentucky in the NIT several years ago. Or no, that was Robert Morris. But either way, you got
Robert was involved. Bob was involved in some capacity.
Somehow Robert was involved there.
Hey, did you pick a 12 over a 5 yet? Have you looked into that? Because there's always one. You have one?
Yeah, I'm going with I'm doing it just because, like you said, there almost always is a 12 over 5. You got to pick some upsets here and there. It's interesting because when I look at this, I actually really like Creighton. I think that they're going to make a deep run. They're going to end up playing Gonzaga eventually, which I'm going to have Gonzaga winning. But the other 12 over 5 would be Georgetown over Colorado. Now, that one's interesting because this goes back to my point a minute ago about coming into the tournament hot. Now, Georgetown obviously wasn't on track to make the tournament this year until they went on that run and literally, I mean, they beat down Creighton in the championship.
Yeah, that was bad.
Championship. And so now you're like, okay, well, is Georgetown riding this high, or are they going to show up and be like, who they are? So that one's kind of interesting in my opinion.
Yeah, I like Georgetown. I have them advancing from the first round. Like I said, I'm going chaos, man. I think it's going to be, if there's a year to pick against chalk, and like if you're on the fence or you have these little interesting tidbits and you're looking at a game, I think this is the year to like just constantly go against the favorite. If you have a reason to do so, if you think so. Like another example is Arkansas and Colgate. Like everybody thinks that's going to be a shootout. They're like, oh, Colgate can score a lot. Okay, if it's going to be a shootout and you're like, tip Arkansas probably will still win, well, go Colgate. Like this is the year where crazy stuff's going to happen. You want to know my most confident 12 over 5, Brian?
You going Winthrop over? Oh, you're going the Beavers.
Damn, how about them Beavers? Oregon State, over the Tennessee Vols, which is funny because I just showed my teeth and Tennessee fans don't have any. So it's interesting because you look at these matchups. I made a lot of jokes about Tennessee this week. Hey, I work with Ronnie Lane. I got to get my Tennessee Vols jokes.
Yeah, and they just beat us twice, so have at it, man.
That's not saying much. Like I just said, we just ranked our confidence in the Gators, and I think combined it's like a 4 if you add our numbers together. So
you're going with the Beavs. So who'd be happy about that is Devin over at Seventh Son. She's an alumni there, Beaver alumni.
Oregon State. Now Oregon State upset Oregon, and I believe the Pac-12 championship. I've learned to go more chalky and then just pick an upset here and there. But for me, I'm really, anytime I'm like in a scenario and I went through the bracket and I'm like, oh, maybe I think there's gonna be a lot of chaos. I really, really do. At least in the first round. In the first round, I think there's a lot of chaos. And then I think it levels out in round 2.
Yeah, I think it always kind of ends up leveling out a little bit further as you go. And that's kind of where it's tough, right? If you don't go too much chalk, because if you go too many upsets, that's when you kind of start,
losing those teams.
Yeah, you start falling apart there. You'll nail an upset or two, but then you start fall apart. I'm going to go with Winthrop over Villanova. Just kind of doing some more research because admittedly I haven't watched Nova this year. But losing Connor Gillespie, apparently this has made them a completely different team, and they're just literally sputtering to the finish line here. So
yeah,
Winthrop, they're one of those teams you're used to seeing that name. They've been in the bracket, several times since we've been doing this over the many years that we have. They're a team that's, again, smaller school, but they've got some tournament experience. And I think that that's one of those teams where if you look at the next round, who they would play, they've got either Purdue or North Texas. That could be one of those things where we get that double seed matchup where you might get like a 13 versus 12, which we kind of see in most years. So I think that would give Winthrop a chance to maybe get to the Sweet 16. So I like them beating the 5 there in Nova.
Yeah, certainly fun. I'm excited to kind of watch. And, shout out to all the fans out there. We're all blessed to be able to have March Madness back. We're going to take a quick break. Some news in the NFL. It's just been a crazy free agency frenzy to start things out. We're going to take, like I said, a quick commercial break. We'll talk about it in a second. Craft Beer Playbook blooper reel.
Oh, I did just watch The Prestige the other day, though.
It's a great one, too.
Yeah.
What a twist.
Actually, okay, let me ask you this. Off the record, though. This is nothing to do with it.
So technically, everything's on the record.
Did you like the Prestige better or the other one that had a twist? Yeah. with Edward Norton because I know that's your
They're
guy.
both really good. Prestige is better.
Either you get like Ants came out or when like
Bugs
Life, and it's like, why would I go see both of those? Why would I go see two Pixar movies?
Ants was so bad. Ants wasn't Pixar though.
Ants wasn't that bad.
It sucked. Bugs Life at least had other bugs. After 10 minutes of Ants, I was like, we get it. You're ants. Craft Beer Playbook. Yep. What's up, guys? Back in it, back at it. Brian, obviously, because our last event was live, hasn't had a chance to watch our commercials yet. Yes,
good.
We do have a few commercials. That's one of our many blooper reel commercials that we'll have in there for you. And yeah, we had a little off the record / on the record conversation about movies. We usually, stick to sports and beer, but yeah, sometimes we get some film involved as well. And I think we ran a poll on the Craft Beer Playbook. It wasn't 100% Bugs Life, but it was predominantly people
First of all,
voting.
I never made the argument that Ants was better. I just said it. Literally, the proof is right there in that video. I said it wasn't that bad. But when you and I talked about it, it was clear that I didn't really remember that movie because I thought that was the one that had the grasshopper, but that was a Bugs Life. So I get it. They're ants.
And we talked about a few other movies like that, like Paul Blart Mall Cop, and then Observe and Report with Seth Rogen. You mentioned Prestige and Illusionist are a couple different ones. One had Hugh Jackman, one had Edward Norton. So, yeah, there was a lot of movies. And that tends to happen in Hollywood because scripts are usually picked up around the same time. So two different, companies will typically produce a movie. That's why we see that. Like once a year, there's usually two movies that are similar made. But we're going to get back into the sports here, and a lot going on in NFL free agency. This is episode 11 of the Craft Beer Playbook. Again, shout out to everybody that got us through the first 10 episodes. Want to continue to give love to a few of the great listeners that have been on board since day one. Justin, Leroy, our guy Mark, all the way over in Kentucky, hooked us up with these awesome boards that we've been using when we're in person for episodes. And it's just been phenomenal. Sarasota Hazy. And then we get to do a couple events, right, Brian, with both Seventh Son and Bassett, where we met some great people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been a ton of fun, and just love the support. I know my parents have enjoyed it. There's been they've gotten to get up. My mom's not a big beer drinker, but she's now found a love for sours. So they're up visiting my sister right now, and they're going to go to some breweries, and she's going to be trying out some sours. So that's what's fun about it is it's like now you get that opportunity to expand other people. My dad's gotten into it. I got my uncle now who used to go out, play around at golf. We'd go to a sports bar afterwards, and he'd only drink like Miller Lite, Coors Light. And he's like, I don't like that heavy stuff. And he was talking about heavy stuff being like Yingling. And now I got him. He'll call me up. He just called me the other day, left a voicemail, and was like, hey, I'm at this restaurant. I just tried this, tangerine wheat ale from, such and such. And he's like, have you ever tried it before? So it's just really cool, man. It's cool to see that kind of take over and, have people kind of find their niche. Because we talked about that in one of the earlier episodes too, where getting into the craft beer scene is just about finding your entry point, and finding what you like. So that's been fun to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously want to give some love to the ladies, Ariel and Fabi, respectfully our fiance and wife. And just the support's been phenomenal. We're excited to keep this going. And like I said, stay tuned because we're going to keep growing. We're going to start collabing with some other beer podcasters. We're going to get out to some more breweries. So a lot to see, just like in NFL free agency, Brian. And before we go into that, I'm going to grab another beer here. I don't know where you're at. I got this. And I thought we do a lot with Hidden Springs. Obviously, huge fan. This is the E Stevie. And obviously it's like Stone Cold Steve Austin on the front. And I believe that's The Rock next to him. And they have a lot of wrestling stuff on here. So I was like, oh my God, I got to get it. And this was before March 16th, which was 3/16 day Stone Cold Steve Austin. Admittedly, I've already had two of these. 2 beers and 2 craft beers and just pour them onto your face like he does. Yeah, totally. I'll do that off air. So this, I've actually had this. Honestly, I like it. Here's the problem when you're a place like that just is known for doing great beer. Hidden Springs is so good. And I said this the other day. I think it was the Ask Alice. We were there with our buddy Tim. And I was like, when you're always expecting like a 10 out of 10 on every beer that you try from a brewery, it leaves a lot of room to be disappointed. Not that a beer is bad, but when you're like always expecting it to be one of your new favorite beers, because, and I'll say like, that's how I am with Hidden Springs. Like so many beers they make, I'm like, this is one of my favorite beers I've ever had. So when I got the E Stevie, I was like, oh my God, I'm about to add another one of my favorites to the collection. It's okay. It's good. It's all right. It's a sour. But again, the can art's amazing. The name is cool. And it's average. Like, it's an average sour. But again, you're not going to hit on every beer. And, everybody's palates are different. One thing that I think is average, Brian, you might love, vice versa.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And I think that, that comes down to what we talked about too with Devin and Tom and Houston, as far as like experimenting. A lot of times there's beers that they'll try and they'll kind of see. And like you said, everyone's palates are different. So they may think it's something that's really good, and then maybe it doesn't sell well, or vice versa. We were talking about the Tang one that Houston developed, and he said how crazy popular that one's, the orange sour there, and how they're sold out, or they're selling out of that faster than anything else. So, it's just about finding your taste and, picking that lane.
So speaking of finding your taste and picking a lane, it appears the Patriots have done that in free agency, and their lane is spending money. Now, they've got a lot of money to spend, and I don't want to go through every free agent signing and every single thing that's happened. Clearly by the end of this episode, maybe the Dolphins have signed one of these big receivers. So we'll try to avoid anything that could potentially I know there's a couple kind of left, but just so far looking through free agency, has anything popped out to you? I've been shocked, I'll say, here in Tampa Bay. I didn't think, and I know that the cap is a myth and that there's ways to get around, cap casualties and the roof of the how much you can spend and how much is available. I've been so shocked that the Bucs have been able to figure out all these different ways to get creative. Like, obviously we're in Tampa Bay, but like outside of the Patriots spending as much as they have, I've been equally surprised as the Bucs at being able to retain as many players that they have.
Yeah, well, what it boils down to is just the main decision from a team. Do we want to just kind of pay up, cash in our chips now, or kick the can down the road, like the saying goes? I think when you're in a position with, like the Bucs, where you have this team, obviously, who just won a Super Bowl, you have Tom Brady who's ready to re-up. That's the perfect situation where you want to kick the can down the road. When you have that window open, now it's not that they're going to be able to just keep this whole team together for the next 5 years. That's not how it works, right? So the salary cap, yes, is a myth in the sense that there's sort of this sliding scale and you can kind of move a lot of things around, but eventually you pay for that, right? So eventually it's going to happen. I think the Bucs are just taking that decision and saying, okay, so do we make the tough decision to cut some of these guys now to be like right at the cap, or do we restructure everything, push it down for maybe next year or the year after, and try to take that 2 to 3 year window and go for it? So I think you're going to see the Bucs have many more tough decisions to make in the next 2 years than it seemed that they did this offseason, because they're trying to maximize on that window and go for it one more time.
And that window is completely based on Tom Brady and the age of their quarterback. And it makes sense. So like, I don't think it's shocking in terms of like, oh, what about 5 years from now? Well, Brady probably won't be playing in 5 years. Will Brady be playing this year? Yes. That's why you go for it. And you've already won the Super Bowl. You've seen the success. Now, just because you have an aging quarterback that has the window closing doesn't mean you can make that decision as a franchise to go after it. The Steelers have done the opposite. They've let everybody walk, and Roethlisberger's coming back. And I mean, I think it's safe to say they were in a worse cap place than the Bucs, but clearly there's two different minds of thought there and trains of thought when it comes to what the Bucs are doing. And they're like, hey, we're Super Bowl champs. We want to try to run it back. And on the other side, you have the Steelers who are like, yeah, we're 11-0. We're chasing history, but we got baffled in the playoffs first round by the Browns. And Roethlisberger's coming back, but we don't know what to expect. We're going to let a lot of guys walk because we'll see what happens next year. But really, if we're being honest with ourselves, it's about what's after Roethlisberger. And we need to have as much cap space and flexibility as possible in 2022.
Yeah, and I think you look at a team like the Patriots and what they did and how shocking that's been. I think that sets up for them making a major power move for a quarterback. I think that they're going to be a team that's very active in the first round.
They re-signed Cam Newton.
Yeah, but that's not their long-term plan. And if you look at them going just absolutely apeshit in free agency, which is uncharacteristic of Belichick, I think that you look at them wanting to compete this year. And I think that Belichick knows what we all know, and that this team is not riding on the shoulder of Cam Newton. Yes, they re-signed him, but I think that's just an insurance policy. They're going to draft a quarterback. I think they're going to draft a quarterback in the first round, whether that's at the 15 pick that they have, or they're going to try to trade back up into the end of the first round and get somebody who's sitting there if someone like Mac Jones falls there. And I think they're going to bring in a rookie to compete with Cam and hope that rookie beats him out, or that elevates the play of Cam Newton with all these, additions that they've done in free agency, because you can tell that, Bill is sick to his stomach watching Brady win a Super Bowl, and you can tell that he's not going down.
Do you think that matters? Do you think that, how big of a factor is that? Like, if you're
absolutely,
really,
percent it matters. Listen, when you are great in sports, you get to be that greatness level because of your ego. I mean, you think of it like all the best players ever, they have a huge ego, right? That they're kind of, other than maybe Larry Fitzgerald, who's always been this most humble guy ever. But you look at even like some of the best players in the league, a lot of them have this big ego where they know that they're the best, right? Belichick is that same way. He may not outwardly express it because he's such a monotone, just like internal guy, but that's eating away at that guy, to have people chattering behind his back and say, okay, it wasn't Belichick all these years, it was Brady. Like, that is driving him nuts.
Yeah, but they need a QB to get it done. And I think that's what was so shocking, right? Like, the Patriots have made a bunch of moves. And listen, first of all, they had the money to spend. So, like, it's not like they're just putting themselves in cap hell like the Rams have done in the past, like the Saints have done. Like, they're dumb not to spend the money. But with that being said, you can improve every aspect of your team as much as you want. If you're still a question mark at quarterback, none of that matters. And don't take this the wrong way. As a Dolphins fan, like, you've known that the last 20 years. Like, now you've had different guys pop in. Tannehill certainly was there. You had faith in him, and he's the starter in Tennessee now. I think you still have faith in Tua, who's taken over. But the quarterback is such an important position that if you're the Patriots, you spend a bunch. And look, I'm not saying that their team hasn't improved immensely, because I think it has compared to last year. By the way, it looks like Donta Hightower will be back, who missed all the season, opted out. Patrick Chung will not. He's retired officially earlier on today's before the episode. But I don't know what faith to have in Cam. And if it's not Cam, even if it's one of those rookies, same issue, at least in 2021.
Yeah, but that's my point, right? Is I don't think they're going into camp with Cam as the bona fide starter. I expect them to be a major player in the draft. And again, Deshaun Watson's still dangling out there. Now we've got all those, the sexual assault, suits that are popping up and things like that. We obviously, no one knows what's going to happen.
Well, not assault, harassment, because I know that
there's both sexual assault and harassment suits are being filed. So there's allegations of both. He's kind of in a mess right now, but again, that still exists as a possibility, because nothing has changed in the sense that Deshaun doesn't want to play for the Texans anymore. The Patriots need a quarterback. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to be the move they make. I'm just saying they're going to make a move for a quarterback, whether it's with Deshaun Watson and selling off their future to get him, or they make a major move in the first round. But I don't expect them to enter camp next year with Cam Newton as the only guy that's a viable starter.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, there has to be more to it. Certainly something to keep an eye on. There's been a lot of other movement. I thought, another team we talk about, Brian, and again, it'd be easy to go through like every player and every move. I was actually quietly impressed with a couple of teams. First of which is Kansas City, because they let Eric Fisher walk. They let Schwartz walk. Ryder right in the middle, the center. They let him walk. And you're like, holy crap, they have no offensive line. That ain't the case no more, man. I think Kansas City, with some of the moves that they've made, have really solidified that O-line. And I think that they've had one of the better off seasons, to be honest.
Well, that was their main focus, right? Is improving the talent on the offensive line, but also going cheaper. They have to, right? And that's a tough thing. Like, how do you improve your offensive line but still go cheaper? They made some tough decisions by cutting their 2 tackles. They signed Joe Thuney, which is a big signing for them. And I think they really have a lot of faith in I just blanked
Kyle Long. They bring him back in, right?
But they got a lot of faith.
Oh, the young guy.
Lucas Niang, yeah. So
the young guy.
The guy didn't give up a sack in college, right? So, and he opted out last year because of the pandemic. So, and he's also, I think he needed to really recover because he had a major injury he was battling through his senior year with TCU. So that's a guy they really believe in. So now you look at this, they've got Kyle Long, Lucas Niang, and they've got Joe Thuney now. You could argue that they've definitely upgraded their offensive line, and they haven't even entered the draft yet. So now you look at where they're at, towards the end of the first round. That's going to be the prime spot for picking up another great offensive lineman who could easily slide into a starting spot for them and get them where they need to be.
Oliver's in. He's ready to play offensive line, receiver, whatever you need.
His tongue hanging out.
Look at this little guy. We met a brew pup at Bastet, Baloo.
Baloo the dog.
Hi, Paul. So yeah, you know what, and this is surprisingly, I thought the Dolphins were going to be more active, and they still might be. There's still a lot of names out there. I thought the Jets had, again, a quietly good, free agency period. They picked up a bunch of guys. Again, so like with them, kind of like the Patriots, but in a different capacity. I don't know what's going on at quarterback. Is it going to be Darnold? Do they make a trade? Do they draft a guy? There's just so much uncertainty in that division at the quarterback position. And even down in Miami, I know you hate to hear it, but look, we've heard the rumors of Watson to the Dolphins and a possible Tua trade, right? So like you just look across it with the exception of Josh Allen and the Bills, who are going to be the favorite probably. Well, I would say no matter what happens, but I think if Watson goes to any of the other three teams in the division, possibly there's a conversation there. Maybe that's the conversation, Brian. Do you think if Watson ended up on the Patriots, Jets, or Dolphins, that they would be the favorite to win the division next year? Because I'm assuming you, like Vegas, thinks that the Bills are in the driver's seat right now.
Yeah, that's a tough question because I think the Bills have kind of really solidified themselves and kind of almost put that in pen as of right now. Now, does that change if Watson lands on one of those other teams? I think it changes the scope of who can contend with the Bills, because I don't think that Vegas or really any other fans think that there's a team close to challenging the Bills right now. Even as a Dolphins fan, they need to make significant improvements on the offensive side for, in my opinion, to compete with the Bills. But because of what it's gonna take, and again, now we don't know what these, sexual assault, sexual harassment lawsuits, we don't know what that's going to do to the situation. But that aside, if it takes what it takes to get Deshaun Watson, you're just losing so much talent, so many picks from a team like the Dolphins or the Jets, that for me, it's like that's going to take a couple years to replenish. I don't think that that's enough to put them as the favorite to win the division over the Bills just yet. But we'll see how it shakes out. I don't know. There's a lot of movement still to go with the draft.
Absolutely, man. Any final thoughts on free agency? Any guys that landed somewhere that you were surprised about? You did slightly edge me out of the Curtis Samuel bet we found out last night.
Yeah, no, I was kind of surprised to see the market so down on wide receivers, but I think that's the main thing that it shows you about the sentiment of these teams and what they're looking at that position. I think it shows a lot of faith and trust in the draft in that position. So I think you're going to see another year again where you see a lot of wide receivers taken round 1, round 2, because that's why these free agent wide receivers aren't getting paid, because these teams obviously say, okay, well, there's much cheaper options we can go have in the draft. You look at some of the great rookie seasons that we've seen those last couple of years. Look at Justin Jefferson last year being a sort of back end first round pick who was in the running for offensive rookie of the year. I mean, there's a lot of guys out there again this year that can be those impact guys. You look at guys like Kyle Pitts, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, obviously Jamar Chase. Like, there are some weapons out there that these teams feel like, can impact their team right away. I'm hoping the Dolphins are in on one of them, or two of them. But yeah, I think that was the biggest thing kind of stood out to me. I expected that to be a big mover in free agency, but to see the wide receivers kind of last this long has been kind of surprising.
I just want to point out, you had Curtis at 10 mil, and I allowed you to get to 12 mil on the bet.
And we settled on 14.
And what did he end up at? No, we ended up at 12.
No.
Yes, we did.
No,
look at the text.
No, because you argued that he was going to be, first of all, you argued that he was going to get paid more than the franchise tag. That was your argument. Because you said on open market, guys get paid way more. The franchise tag, which
they typically do, by the way.
Okay.
And I still think well, here's the thing. The market hasn't been set. So like pass rusher is interesting because I know we're wrapping things up here. Pass rusher is interesting because Shaq Barrett was still the one that set the pass rusher market. He signed, with the exception of JJ Watt getting overpaid at $15 million and doing that 2 weeks ago. Shaq Barrett set the market at $17 million with $18 million per in escalators. And you saw Bud Dupree take 16.5. If Shaq would have gotten $20 million, Bud Dupree would have gotten 19.5. So players set the bar. I'd argue that bar hasn't been set for receivers yet because Juju and Galladay, up to all the point at least of all these other receivers signing, hadn't signed yet. I just assume one of those guys, because they're the two premier players at the position, would have went somewhere and signed a big deal. And then what happens is you have these lesser guys like Curtis Samuel or Nelson Aguilar or any of these cats. They sign and they have precedent. They say, well, look, that guy's he's the best in the group this offseason, but he's getting X amount. So we'll take $3 million less than that. So with Curtis, it wasn't really him as much because he signed after a lot of other receivers too. But with Galladay and Juju just kind of like waiting to see their options. I mean, the numbers don't go up.
They're not going up at this point. At this point, you're going to see, the highest paid receiver so far has been Nelson Aguilar getting 13 a year, which clearly we can see now that he was overpaid. But you've got 13 a year for Aguilar. Then you've got Samuel just signing yesterday for
11.5.
Yeah, 11.5 a year. I think you're going to see Galladay probably. He might be the one that could probably get to maybe 13, 14 mil. He might end up winning the crown there. But those guys are going to settle in somewhere between like 10 and probably 13 million.
But again, that's based on the market and based on what happened. And if they would have, I think if one of the big name receivers, and you can say that about any position, if the big name guy signs first, which they typically do, they set the market and they set the bar, and it's usually higher than expected. And that helps other guys get paid. Unfortunately for receivers, partially because of the draft class, as you mentioned, that opportunity wasn't there for a lot of these guys. Now, Aguilar is the exception, right? Because he said, well, there is no market yet. This is what I think my market value is. Signed for what he signed for, but you'll see.
Man, he did. Good for him.
But it doesn't work vice versa, though. So, like, Galladay and Smith-Schuster can't leverage Aguilar to get more money. They're not going to be like, well, we're X amount better. We deserve
they can
8
try.
more.
Really, it's not working at this point. That's why these guys are still on the street.
Precedent doesn't work backwards like that in the NFL free open market. It works the other way around. So you can use a guy that's ahead of you to say, I deserve close to that. You can't use a guy below you to say, I deserve a lot more than him. It just doesn't go that way. Not in terms of how the free agent market works. But the next time we chat, Brian, we'll have a lot more figured out. We'll be in the Sweet 16 of the March Madness brackets. We'll have free agency. We'll actually be looking more at draft a week from now. And hopefully you and I both survive, as do the Gators, in the next 48 hours. We'll be in a much better mood.
Yes, sir. Looking forward to it. We need that bloodshed tomorrow.
Chaos is a ladder, as Littlefinger used to say in Game of Thrones.
Nice.
All right, episode 11. Don't forget to follow us at the Craft Beer Playbook on both Instagram and Facebook, at Beer Playbook on Twitter, and find us all the time at thecraftbeerplaybook.com. And we'll chat real soon with some, like I said, updated information on our next event and where we'll be. We'll see you guys.
Holla.